All right, so we're gonna do Eastern Conference grades based on what my expectations were at the beginning of the season. I'll share what those expectations were as we go along. So these grades aren't necessarily solely based on if a team is high or low in the standings. I got some low standing teams with some higher grades than some higher standing teams, just because my expectations were one thing and they either exceeded it, met it, or were way below expectations. So let's go ahead and get into this. We have a tier list. Let's go ahead and start. Starting out, we're going to start out with the Brooklyn Nets. They're currently fourth in the Eastern Conference. They're 27-16. And I gave them a B, a solid B. Now, the Brooklyn Nets, as we all know, they had a very, 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 very rough start. A lot of off-court stuff. A lot of, honestly, that's really what it was. Just a lot of off-court stuff, from Kyrie's suspension to Steve Nash getting fired. KD's one of the trade requests, demanding the trade in the summer. Like, they just started this season with a whole lot of turmoil. Once that off-court stuff stopped, they really turned it around. Like, they really, really turned it around and went on I want to say that their peak, they were at a 12-game streak. I saw a critique of this team by some people on the internet of like, they're too reliant on KD and Kyrie. And I'm like, I get that they are very reliant on them scoring in a crazy efficient manner. But that's also why you have those guys in your team, and that's what they're there for. So it's a catch-22. To me at least, it doesn't feel like they're over-relying on them. They just expect their superstars to be superstars. So I'm cool with it. And this is range. This is just mid-season. So for right now, to me, they turned it around in this moment over the last month. But because I gotta include the first month and a half of the season, that's what puts them at a B for me personally. At the end of the season, they can just mess around, do some extra credit, and they gonna end up at an A. But for right now, they're a B for me. That's all. This is also why I love doing grades, because I get reactions like this from y'all, and I like it. I like when we have conversations. I like when y'all don't agree with me, because then I get to see y'all side of things. Y'all get to see my side of things. We get to have a conversation on the low. All right, let's get into let's knock out some of these A's. Celtics. I think I have this. Celtics. Actually have an A plus. They well exceeded my expectations. I literally have written down here, I don't want to jinx them, but they remind me a lot of how I felt about the Suns last year. And if y'all remember on these streams last year, especially going into the playoffs, almost every week I was talking about the Suns, saying I don't see any flaws in this team. And that's starting to feel that's starting to be how I feel about the Boston Celtics. I love what Malcolm Brogdon is bringing to this team. He's been great off the bench and just been like a steady hand of just within that offense. He's not and he doesn't have to be the Malcolm Brogdon that we all know he has been in the years past in terms of his scoring, but they don't need that from him. He's still playing really good defense. He's still playing well, right? And also have written down here for the Boston Celtics, I was worried about RG3's return. RG3. I am not a football fan. I don't know why I said that. Time Lord's return, Robert Williams III. And one of the things I was worried about was I don't know what he's going to look like. Well, I just happened to stumble across, ended up being watching. I think it was a second game back, and he looked springy. His numbers weren't crazy. He didn't go crazy scoring. He had some rebounds. I want to see I saw him get 2 blocks. He's playing a defense around the rim. Yes. He did Malcolm Brogdon did just have 30 off the bench the other night. He had 30 in back-to-back games off the bench. Their last 2 games he had 30. But Time Lord, I literally just written down, he looks springy, and that's good considering his injury was a lower body injury. And when Udoka was out, like Olise just said, I also thought they were going to miss a step, and they didn't. They didn't miss a step at all. They looked just as good as they did on their finals run last season. So shout out to the Celtics for keeping up this great level of play. Yeah, the Nets have been really good. Going back to you, Maddox, the KD injury is literally the worst thing possible for them right now. We'll see how they continue to fare. It's funny, not to circle back on the Nets. I need Ben Simmons to score more. I need Ben Simmons to try to score the ball. I know he had a triple double in their second game without Ben Simmons, but in that first, without Kevin Durant, but in that first game without Kevin Durant, he didn't even look at the basket. I need him to. The Nets need him to try to score more. Other A team obviously has got to be the Bucks. If you really care, I had the Celtics as the A plus. The Bucks are just the A. They're still dealing with Chris Middleton's injury. A lot of people have. I think I made a TikTok about this literally just yesterday. People saying that the Bucks are falling off or they don't look as dominant as they used to. I've heard some comments about Drew Holiday's performances. I even heard people saying Giannis doesn't look as dominant as he has in the past. They're just missing Chris Middleton. But even with that, they're still second in the East. They're 29-16. They're still great defensively. Offensively, I think they can maybe have a couple of things to be desired, but that's because you're missing 20 points a game on some really solid efficiency from Chris Middleton. So I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at or nor am I losing sleep about the idea that the Bucks fell off or anything like that. Before we start looking at comments again, I'm gonna go into the next team, and that's my Sixers. I gave my Sixers a B. I like what the Sixers are doing. They're a little bit below my expectations, but I take it with a grain of salt because we spent so much time with Joel Embiid injured, with James Harden out of the lineup. Tyrese Maxey just got back like a week ago. Like mid-December. And we're pulling it together. That's all I can say. They're pulling it together. When the team is healthy, when everyone is there, they do look good. I think the Sixers, and this is me just being a Sixers fan, so I'm going to talk about the Sixers a little longer than everybody else. But to me, the Sixers have one of the best starting fives in the NBA. But when you start to look at our bench is where it's understandable. You really can start poking some holes in our bench. We have a lot of specialist guys. I've said this before. The one, I guess, thing that helped fulfill that a little bit was the addition of DeAnthony Melton. I've loved what I've seen from him this year so far. The two-way play, I'm loving it. I'm loving what I'm seeing. But every now and then you still got guys like Korkmaz and George Niang in the game. I love those guys. They're flame torches. Like when they're hot, but they're not amazing defenders. And when they're not hot, it's like, what are you out there for? So there's some things to be desired from the bench for the Sixers, but starting five is one of the best in the league. Call me biased. I don't care. All right, next up on the list, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. I gave them a B plus. A couple of reasons, right? So I think the Donovan Mitchell trade was a huge success. If you don't know right now, the Cavs are fifth in the Eastern Conference. They're 28-17. I gave him a B plus. The Donovan Mitchell trade was clearly the right move. You can make the argument he's the best shooting guard in the league, and the only other person I'm having the conversation with is Devin Booker. If you're not talking about those two guys, I don't even care who you're saying the best shooting guard is in the league, because I don't want to have the conversation with you, because to me, the conversation is only between those two guys. And yes, I know SGA is killing it right now, and I love what SGA is doing. I'm still giving it to those two guys. I love SGA, and maybe I'll explain this a little bit more when we do the Western Conference stuff. But if you're not saying Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell for best shooting guard in the league, I really don't want to have a conversation with you. Not to be rude, but to be rude. A couple of just things when I think about the Cavs. The defense is still amazing. Second best defense in the NBA. Offense is waning a little bit. I want to say they're like middle of the pack on offense. I wrote it down for almost every other team. I did not write it down for the Cavs, but I do remember them being around middle of the pack-ish. So there's some things to be desired offensively from this team, but I think that comes from when you got guys like Evan Mobley still developing his game offensively. Jared Allen, I love his game. Absolutely amazing center for this team. Like a perfect center for a pick and roll, rim running type of team that wants to just have their big catch a lob or two, get a dump off from a driving guard, get an offensive rebound and put it back up. Absolutely amazing. Like just absolutely amazing. I gotta give some love to the New York Knicks. I'm giving the Knicks an A-. And I'm gonna tell you why I'm giving the Knicks an A-. Because if you remember correctly, when we looked at my standings from last year, I thought the Knicks were gonna be a 10 seed. Right now they're 6. Now that's not a crazy difference, and you mess around and lose a couple of games, it can go either way. You know what I'm saying? That's just how close the Eastern Conference is. But the way they're playing, I will be honest, I did not have a lot of hope for this Jalen Brunson signing. The mid 3 conversations that we were having in the summer, I was like, I get it. The mid-3 conversations, I completely understood. But what I've seen from Jalen Brunson and how the addition of Jalen Brunson has directly impacted Julius Randle's and RJ Barrett's game, I think what we saw last year, yes, did they underwhelm us, those two guys? Surely, yes, they did. But the addition of a steady point guard to this team has been a night and day difference. Because last year, you got to remember, they spent some time with Kemba Walker at point, D Rose was at point, Alec Burks was at point. No disrespect to any of those guys, but Kemba can't even get a job in the NBA right now. D Rose, I'm always gonna show love to him, and Alec Burks, yeah. So adding Jalen Brunson to this team, the way they've turned this season around and started to string some wins together, am I saying the team is better than the teams that I gave a B to? No, I'm not. I'm saying based on my expectations of them that I had for them going into this season, they have well exceeded my expectations so far into this season. So I have to give them an A based off of what my expectations were. That's where I'm going with this. So I get you, Mad X. As soon as I put this there, this is the first thing I seen in the chat. Oh, what the F? We're talking about Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, and you're saying that's better than Sixers, Nets, and Cavs. I'm not saying that team is better. No, I am not saying that team is better. I'm saying based on my expectations that I had going into this season, they are performing way better than I would have expected. They are performing way, way, way better than I would have expected. Like, for example, just continuing the Knicks love, because I was really like, it's a real thing. Not Knicks love, I should say, but let me read. I'm like, why is this? There we go. I can actually read this now. My notes are way too big. So for example, right now the Knicks are 5th in terms of offensive rating. And the previous 2 years, they were 22nd and 23rd. And that's with still 2 years ago, they were 23rd. And that's the year that Julius Randle was an all-star. So, like, I think we're going to see Julius Randle potentially be an all-star again. At least he's playing at least as good as he was when he was an all-star. We'll see if he actually, gets to make the team, if they add him to the team. But the addition of Jalen Brunson, I literally wrote down, unlocked the offensive ability for this team. Shout out to the Knicks, man. Shout out to the Knicks. I don't remember. What did I have the Hawks as? You said you expected the Hawks to be a 4 seed. We had the Hawks at 9. So that's because I was skeptical of Jalen. I was skeptical of DeJounte Murray and Trae Young playing together. And since we're here, let's give my grade for the Hawks. So for me, it's funny, right? I had the Hawks at 9 to end this season. However, it still feels worse than I expected. So it's going to feel a little hypocritical here, and I'm okay with it. I ain't gonna lie to you. You can call me a hypocrite here. I'm okay with that. Because in my expectations and my predictions, I said the Hawks are going to be the 9 seed. They are the 9 seed. So you would think, in theory, I would have them at a solid grade. You're wrong. I gave the Hawks a D, right? For a lot of reasons. Yes, they are the 9 seed. Yes, technically it's only a couple of games back or whatever. But the Hawks are like so not fun to watch, to me at least. It's a lot of my turn, your turn. I don't like, at least so far, DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. I don't like it so far. And a couple of reasons. Just hear me out here. The Hawks are 29th in 3-pointers made and 24th in percentage. For some context, just last year, they were 11th in makes, and they were the 2nd best in percentage. They're now the 2nd worst 3-point shooting team in the NBA. A team that has Trae Young and the modern NBA where the goal is literally just basically to shoot as many threes as possible. It's 29th in makes right now. John Collins is shooting a career low from 3. Trae Young is shooting 33% from 3. He was 38% last year. Just the team as a whole is not shooting the ball well. And it's not helping a guy like DeJounte Murray, who I'm not going to say he's a bad shooter, but he's not like, that's not a huge major part of his game. And so he's driving and kicking, and it's John Collins for a brick. The defense isn't. Am I looking at the right team? Because I was just about to say something crazy. The defense honestly isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, I was actually very surprised. They're only 12th in terms of defensive rating. I would have assumed, based off just the Hawks and their personnel, before I looked this up, I would have thought they would have been the 21st ranked defensive team and maybe the 12th ranked offensive team, but it's completely flipped on its head. I don't know what's going on down there in Atlanta. John Collins has been in trade rumors for the past 3 years, and he hasn't gotten traded yet. And to be honest, I don't even know if he's going to get traded this season. So, yeah, the Hawks get a D for me. I see some in the comments asking about Dirty D Lollipop. Now that's crazy. How you go from Eastern Conference Finals to 9th seed in 2 seasons? I don't know. And also, they miss Kevin Huerter. Like, I know Kevin Huerter is excellent for the Kings. One of the best low-key pickups in the offseason was Kevin Huerter to the Kings. It was like a low-key pickup that was so good. But the Hawks, considering how much they need three-point shooting right now, which is still crazy to say, a team with Trae Young. Oh, excuse me again. Crazy to say a team with Trae Young needs more three-point shooting, but they miss Kevin Huerter. So the Heat, for me, are a conundrum, because going into the season, like we said, we knew they weren't going to have any offense. We knew offense was going to be their biggest struggle, but we also knew they were going to be able to hang their hat on the defensive side of the ball. So right now, the Heat are 7th in the Eastern Conference. They're 24-21, basically right behind the Knicks, right behind the Cavs. They're in the mix, right? The Eastern Conference is so close with some of these standings. You literally go on like a 3-game win streak, and you can move up 3 standings. But to my point, if the Heat don't have offense, they're 25th in terms of offensive rating in the NBA. They're 5th in defensive rating in the NBA. So they can't score, but they're going to lock you up. They don't have enough offensive weapons. I think a lot of Heat fans were hopeful that Victor Oladipo would be an answer for a lot of them, especially off the bench. Not turning out to look like that. I know he's been in and out of lineup with some injuries. This team definitely would have benefited from making a big swing, like going after Donovan Mitchell, DeJounte Murray, Jalen Brunson. There were some dynamic guards on various levels, all the way from Donovan to Brunson. I'm not saying they're all on the same tier, but there were like dynamic scoring guards available last summer. And obviously I don't know all the ins and outs, whatever. Everything obviously doesn't get reported, but just to me, at least, I don't feel like they made a good enough push for some of these guys. I feel like they desperately needed to get somebody. I know Tyler Hero's still there, but I mean, I want to say he's at like 20, 21 a game right now, maybe. It's just not enough offense. And while I just said it's not enough offense, we did all that, this, that, and the third, and talked about them, the defense is still really good. That's the thing that's crazy about the Miami Heat. The defense is still really, really good. When Jimmy Butler wants to be, he can mess around with like a top 5 player in the NBA. Bam looks like a top 3 center in the NBA from time to time. So it's like the Heat, and I think maybe that's why I'm so hard on the Heat, because they got the cornerstones. They got a guy who can turn into a superstar in the playoffs in Jimmy Butler, and they have one of the best centers and one of the best defensive anchors in the league in Bam Adebayo. You already have your 6-man flamethrower in Tyler Hero. Y'all just needed to put a slightly better team around them, and they failed to do that. But all that being said, because the East is so close and they are still playing amazing defense, I gave the Heat a B-. So I'm gonna put them towards like the end of the B column. I didn't want to disrespect them and give them a C. A B felt nice to me. We just did the Hawks. We finished the Heat. Let's do the Pacers. Indiana Pacers, I feel like it's a no-brainer. A+. Technically, I have them as an A-. But A, because I had them at 15th in the Eastern Conference. I thought they was going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I'm not even going to lie to you. Because for a lot of reasons, various reasons, day one completely surprised me is what I wrote down. 2, I expected the roster to look completely different by now. I just knew Buddy Hield and Miles Turner were not going to be on this team this late into the season. I just knew Buddy Hield and Miles Turner were not going to be here by the end of by this late into the season. But I mean, the Pacers they start out the season hot, surprising a lot of people. I think they're going to settle out to be a low key middle of the pack team, but I think they're going to be a playoff lock. I'd be surprised if they don't make it. Truthfully, they're eighth in the East right now, 23-22. When you look at their offensive, defensive rating, stuff like that, the offensive ratings kind of middle of the pack. Defensive rating is 21st in the league. We ain't gonna talk about that. But Tyrese has been a great addition for this team. I really do think Tyrese Halliburton truly, I don't want to say unlocked because I just said the same thing for Jalen Brunson, but the level of play that we're seeing from Miles Turner this year, I think it could be attributed to two things. One, he actually gets to play center, no longer has to be forced to play power forward, playing alongside Sabonis. And two, he has an absolutely amazing playmaker, dishing him the ball, because Halliburton, and I think rightfully so, is already getting like the young point guard nods. Like he was going on that stretch where it was like double digit assists for like 4 games in a row with no turnovers. Like that's like some elite point guard stuff right there. And it's really good to see him develop that this early in his career already. Chicago Bulls. So the Bulls, the Bulls honestly are a team that I want them to just blow it up. We talked about this last week. I'm not going to go into crazy depth about the Bulls because it was either last week or the week before. I want them to just blow it up. I saw a report from Woj? Shams? Maybe Shams, that teams are like interested, and there's a rumor swirling that not all it wasn't Shams. It was on NBA Central, and the source was low-key some dude I don't recognize at all. So I'm taking it with a grain of salt, but the concept is still a concept that I'm 100% behind. If we look up and by the trade deadline, either Zach, DeMar, or Vooch, somebody, one of them three ain't on this team, I will not be mad. I will actually be happy. For all that, I'm going to give the Bulls a C. Two things can be true for me, and this is why I'm giving the Bulls a C. If Lonzo was there, would this team be better? Yes. If Lonzo was there, would they be as good as I think they would like to be, considering all the moves they've made to get themselves to this point? No. But they wouldn't be the 10th seed either. So two things can be true. They would be significantly better with Lonzo, but they also would not be anywhere close to like title contenders. So I'm giving them a C. What would the Bulls blowing it up look like? To me, full on tank. Like I'm talking, I want to say Vooch is a free agent this summer, so get something back for him. I know Levine just signed that extension, but if somebody wants him, take him. DeMar, I would trade him as well. So for me, the main two trades I would make would be DeMar and Vooch. If you can keep Zach, I would, only because you just have him under contract, and I think he has a bright future. But if you do keep Zach, you have to immediately retool. And I don't know if a retooling is going to fix what's going on here, or is it just going to be a different mess, a different ugly mess. All right, next up on the tier list, we just did the Bulls. I gave the Raptors a C-. I'm not gonna lie, I flirted with a D for the Raptors for a while. I think the Hawks low-key might be the only team. No, Hawks are not the only team that have a D. I gave the Raptors a C-. On paper, it's funny. So the Raptors are 11th in the Eastern Conference. They're 20-25. They have the 13th best offensive rating, the 19th best defense. They're a horrible three-point shooting team. OG is in trade rumors every week. Half the Discord once Fred VanVleet traded. And I'll be honest with you, I feel bamboozled a little bit, because when I watch the Raptors, there are a lot of moments where I'm like, yo, this switchability, rangy defense really do be working. But for y'all to be 19th, a bottom half defensive team, clearly there's some things missing about this defense. And one of the things, to me personally, I think is missing is that interior presence that I keep talking about. Y'all need a center. Go trade for Jakob Poeltl. I don't know if he's going to solve all your issues, but it's a start. I wouldn't be mad I don't think Fred. To be honest with you, at this point, I don't think Fred VanVleet. As much as I love his game, Mega VR's been saying this in the Discord to me for like a month now that Fred VanVleet needs to be traded, and I was like, oh well, he's not. His shot's not falling, the ball's not as in his hands as much. I watched his JJ Redick interview, and I was like, I get it. Like, I was feeling bad for him, not feeling bad, but I get it. I just don't think Fred's the point guard. This team needs a playmaker, and I like Fred, but he ain't one. Their half court offense is very stagnant. The half court offense is ugly. Their offense is, we're going to force you into a turnover and get out on a break and run. It's not great. I feel like I was lied to a little bit defensively for them. The Wizards, I gave a D minus. No, just a D. I'm sorry. They're 23rd in offensive rating. They're 15th in defensive rating, 25th in net rating. They did just re-sign Bradley Beal. I like the Kuzma pickup from the Rush trade. I like what I saw from him last year. I liked the Porzingis trade even. I thought that would be a good fit. I liked what I saw from him during the end of last season. So I'm not going to say I had crazy high expectations for the Wizards, but I thought they would be a little bit better than they are. They look absolutely horrible. And now they're in this weird spot that this team could look drastically different come, maybe not drastically, but slightly different come the offseason. I don't know if it's going to happen by trade deadline, but between all the guys that have to get paid, between like Rui is up for an extension potentially, Kuzma wants to get his bag. They don't have the money to pay all these people without being in luxury tax. They're way too bad of a team to end up in a luxury tax. They have a roster that's built to try to make the playoffs, and there's no way they're making the playoffs. You get a D from me. I gave the Pistons a B. Couple of reasons. They are a young team that is trying to be bad and doing a excellent job of being bad. They're the second worst team in the Eastern Conference. And it's funny because I gave the Hornets a C for being the worst team in the Eastern Conference, but they're two bad teams that I feel completely different about. On the Pistons side of things, it's unfortunate that Cade Cunningham is injured and out for the rest of the season, but it gives guys like, I had to write them down because I always mess their names up. But I like what I'm seeing from Jaden Ivey, Jalen Durian, Killian Hayes. They're getting time to develop. It's not always pretty, I'll be honest with you. But there are some moments where I'm like, okay, this team is developing. They're going to get Cade back. He's going to be the engine that kind of keeps this offense together. I'm honestly a little optimistic to see what they're going to do. I'm very curious to see what they do in the draft. They're going to have a high pick because they're trash, but it's one of the teams that are trash and that I'm optimistic about, right? Now, on the other hand, I gave the Hornets, who have even worse record than the Pistons, only slightly, but a little bit worse. I gave them a C because they're a bad team that I don't feel as good about. The injury bug has torn this team apart. LaMelo Ball, he's been back since mid-December. He missed basically the beginning of the season. Gordon Hayward's been in and out of the lineup all season long. He's currently out. Miles Bridges, still don't know what's going to him, to be honest. Me and my boys was talking about that on Xbox the other day. It's like, yo, is he available for another thing to pick up? Like, truly have no idea what's going on with him. Terry Rozier is kind of sort of on the trade block, but he has 3 years on his deal left. Also, Gordon Hayward's feels like almost like a dead contract considering he's a free agent in the summer of 2024. I don't think you can trade him, to be honest with you, because of his injury history. He played in the last 2 seasons. He's played 44 and 49 games respectively. He's played 21 out of 42 possible games this season. He can't stay healthy and stay on the floor. And the reason I have them in the C is because I'm not going to say I had crazy high expectations for the Hornets. I had him at 13th in the West Eastern Conference. But it's just what I'm seeing and how they're performing is horrible. And believe it or not, the Magic, another team that is towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference, 13th in the East, I'm giving them a B only because this is probably, to me, the Magic are the brightest. The Magic and the Thunder are the brightest young team, or some of the brightest young developing teams in the league. I really like the Magic are building and what they have. I like the young pieces they have. I love what I'm seeing out of Markelle Fultz. Say it's a Sixers fan in me, that's okay. And I think they have, especially in that front court, they have a lot of young guys that honestly they can maybe move to move a piece here or there to try to fill out some of the roster in other ways as they continue to develop their young guys. So this is the full grades. Some of them I like, some I'm a little iffy on. Some teams I feel like it could have been harder on. I gave a lot of teams a B, obviously, but I feel like a lot of teams are meeting my expectations of them. If you ain't meeting my expectations, you got a lower grade. And if you exceeded my expectations, you got a higher grade. But once again, these grades weren't based on the standings, because you see the Magic is up here, you see the Pistons are up there, but you also see, I guess I don't really have a good team crazy low. But yeah, not necessarily based on the standings, basically just based on what my expectations were going into the season versus where they are now. Honestly, it really just gave me an opportunity to talk about every team and the conference and hang out with y'all.